So last week we discussed the mitzvah of Parshas Zachar, the mitzvah of remembering Amalek. This week we'll focus on the mitzvah Hayom, the mitzvah of Purim. So actually Purim is really stretched out this year, which could be a good thing if you like Purim. Tomorrow we observe Tainus Esther, that is the fast of Esther, and it's not the typical fast. The typical fast we have, the 4 fast days are Zecher L'Churban. The Navi Zechariah tells us Som HaRavi, the fast of the 4th month, the fast of the 5th month. So Yud Zayin Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, Som Gedalia, and Asara B'Teves. Those are remembrance of the temple. That it has to do with remembering the destruction of the temple, the Churban HaBayis. And you close the door. And however, Tainus Esther has nothing to do with that. Tainus Esther is what they call a Tainus Shel Simcha. It sounds a little like an oxymoron. But a tainus is a happy tainus. It's a happy day. It's a day where we're redeemed from the decree of Haman wanting to kill all the men, women, and children, etc. So usually Tainus Esther usually leads right into Purim. In fact, that makes it even longer, the fast, because you go from Tainus Esther, you don't eat, you hear the Megillah reading, and then you eat. However, in that sense, this year is easier. Tainus Esther is tomorrow, Thursday morning. It depends. I have different times. I have 3 different times when the fast starts. On the shul calendar, it says, I think, 5:45. On Eisman, it says 5:58. But if I look on Zmanim, I guess which is a different time zone, it says 5:40 and 4 seconds. So I guess that's your options: 5:40, 5:45, or 5:58. But the fast begins tomorrow morning, so you have to make that tough decision. If you're going to want to wake up in the morning and have your coffee and your muffin or whatever you want to eat before the fast. You'll be downstairs? But it's not one of those fasts that begin the night before. So tonight we can eat all you want, and tomorrow morning, whatever that time is, anywhere from 5:40 to 6, the fast will begin, and it goes to the shul calendar said 6:20. You're not going to find earlier than that anywhere. So not before 6:20 anyway, and then then you can eat, and then. So then I would expect if Tainus Esther usually precedes Purim the day before, so I guess Friday would have been Purim, but when is Purim? Purim is on Sunday. But actually the date is Sunday. It's not that it fell on Shabbos. The 14th day of Adar is Sunday. Last Sunday was Zayin Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu's birth and Yortzeit. The 14th of Adar is Purim. So Thursday, so usually you fast the day before. So obviously I understand why you can't fast the day before Purim, because it's Shabbos, and we don't fast on Shabbos. The only time we fast on Shabbos is when?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur. Even Tisha B'Av, we don't fast on Shabbos. So what about Friday? So Friday also, in general, we try to not fast on Friday because you don't want to go into Shabbos hungry. It's a busy day, so we're pushing it off to Thursday. And in fact, that's one of the proofs. Usually we have a principle that if Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, we have a halacha, when do we fast? We don't fast on Shabbos. When do we fast? On Friday or Sunday or Thursday?
Sunday.
Sunday is correct. Why don't we make it Thursday or Friday, like we're doing Tainus Esther? Because this is one of the proofs that Tainus Esther is fundamentally different than Tisha B'Av and Yud Zayin Tam is because we have a principle in the Gemara. We don't, something which is remembrance of negatives, punishment, prunios, bad tidings, we push off. We don't make earlier. So if Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos, we can't fast on Shabbos, we're not going to make it earlier, we push it further to Sunday. So if Tainus Esther was one of those fasts, so then you wouldn't be able to, you would be making it later, not earlier. The fact that Purim's on Sunday, and we're making Tainus Esther on Thursday shows it's a fundamentally different type of fast day. It's a Tainus Show Simcha, as they call. It's a time where we're rejoicing that we were saved from the decree of Haman. So that's Tainus Esther tomorrow. And Sunday is Purim, i.e. Sunday, Saturday night. After Shabbos we'll be reading the Megillah, and then you'll be partying. And then Sunday morning as well will be a Megillah, with all the mitzvahs hayom. And in Yerushalayim will be on the 15th day. What we call Shushan Purim, because that's when they were in a walled city. So they celebrated Purim a day later. That's when the people in Jerusalem also celebrate Purim. So really there are 2 days of Purim, the 14th and 15th, which is an interesting, there's a Binyan Shlomo points out that how many times in the Megillah does it say the word Purim? Does anyone know? Or anyone want to take a shot in the dark? 0? That's an interesting shot. Well, be wrong, but it's interesting. I'm not going to mention his name, don't worry.
How many did you say?
He said none. Getting closer. Right, 5. Very good, Dave.
Oh.
5 times in the Megillah's Esther. I mean, we could go when we listen to the Megillah Saturday night and Sunday. We'll see if we could pick out those 5 times. But what's also interesting, not only the number 5, but how they are spelled. 2 times they're spelled in the proper way, in the full way, with the vav, Purim. But 3 times they're spelled lacking some of the letters. So why 5 times? And if you do, at least be consistent. Spell it right all 5 times, or don't. Like what's this? 2 times it's spelled the full way, and 3 times not. So we have a principle that when something's spelled mole, it's the full deal. When it's spelled chaser, it's lacking. So what does it mean in this case? So the first Mishnah Megillah, we happen to have a Megillah in front of me, so I'll turn to Daf Beis for a minute. Notice I said Daf Beis we're turning to. That's 2. Why did I turn to page 1? That's because the Gemara's first page is Daf Beis, which is a separate discussion. Why would we begin with Beis and not Aleph? But the Mishnah says, Megillah Nikris, the Megillah is read B'Yid Aleph on the 11th of Adar, B'Yid Beis on the 12th, B'Yid Gimel on the 13th, B'Yid Dalet on the 14th, U'V'Tes Vav on the 15th. Lo Pachos, V'Lo Yoter. Can't be before the 11th, and it can't be after the 15th. Some strong words by the Mishnah. So that's how we got our number 5. There are 5 possible days you could read the Megillah. So what it was is the Mishnah goes on to explain there are certain small towns, villages, who, again, discussion exactly what the issue was, but they couldn't read the Megillah on their own. They used to go into the major cities on Monday and Thursday. Those were business days. And that's why also Ezra instituted we read the Torah Monday and Thursday because people are around. So they made a special dispensation for those small villages. They could come and hear the Megillah early. They could, depending on when Purim is, they could hear either on 11, 12, and 13. So even though they're hearing the Megillah on that day, that's not really Purim. It's only a partial Purim. Hence, Purim spelled incomplete 3 times. That's an allusion to when the villages used to celebrate on 11, 12, and 13 to read the Megillah. However, the 2 full days of Purim that we read the Megillah and observe all the mitzvahs of the day, Megillah, we have the Purim meal, we have the gifts to the poor, we send the gifts to our friends or enemies. All those mitzvahs are done on Purim itself. So hence the full spelling of Purim twice. So that's why twice is full, because that's the 14th and 15th, and the 3 times is the incomplete times. So the Mishnah, so that's what the Mishnah pointed out. Those are the 5 days. So they point out that what's interesting to note as well, this is something unique. Usually we know Torah achasi. We try to keep the unity. That's why the Gemara talks about in Rosh Hashanah about the blowing of the shofar. So it's a discussion. So really, min ha-Torah, all you need is 9 shofar blasts, because it says teruah 3 times in the Torah, and we have a tradition before and after every teruah we have a tekiah. So tekiah, teruah, tekiah, 3 times 3 for higher arithmetic, that equal 9. Those are the 9 biblical shofar blasts. And then we moved, that they talk about from 9 to 30, because we weren't sure exactly what a trua sounds like, so we did all the different possibilities, shvarim, trua. We come up with 30, and our meaning is 100. But there's an interesting discussion how we got, what happens if someone only blew 9 today? Someone only blew 9 shofar blasts. Do they get the biblical commandment? So, according to the question is, why did we go from 9 to 30? So the Rambam writes it's because there was a doubt. Because we were in exile for so long, we don't know exactly what to blow, so we have to cover all 30 to cover our bases. See, if you only blow 9, maybe you got the wrong ones, and therefore it's a doubt on our biblical mitzvah, and we're always strict, and it wouldn't be good. However, others say no, really any of the blasts are good. You know why we went from 9 to 30? We wanted to keep the uniformity. We wanted all the Jewish people blowing the same. But if you only blew 9, you would be Yotzei. But the point being, we always try to do things for unity. Achta. So here, Purim seems to be going in the opposite direction. We're telling, depending on where you live, we're telling you to celebrate Purim on a different day. If you live, most people will celebrate Purim on the 14th day of Adar. But if you're a walled city, you're going to celebrate Purim on the 15th day. So usually we want to keep the uniformity. In fact, the only reason we keep an extra day is we still celebrate Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot at the same time as Israel. We just keep an extra day because of Minhag Avosayim, because that was our custom. And Chutz La'aretz, we weren't sure exactly before they set the calendar exactly when the day was. So it's very strange here that by Purim seems to go against the unity factor, and they instituted 2 separate days for Purim. Why is that? Why is Purim different than all other Yom Tovim is the question I'm sure you're all pondering. So there's 2 approaches, at least 2 approaches I'll be sharing with you. I'm sure we could find some more. One approach is from the Be'er Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Salant. I believe he was a Rav in Jerusalem many years ago. So he points out as follows, that we know there's a concept called Baal Tosif and Baal Tigra. It's a prohibition with the 613 commandments. We can't add 614. That's a biblical violation. And we can't take away one and make 612. And we know the classical case of adding is adding 5 species to your lulav. If you only have 4, we add 5. Or tefillin, 4 parashos, we add 5. But the Rambam points out, but if you, not only physically adding to it, but if the rabbis would say the prohibition of chicken and milk is biblical, it's only rabbinical, meat and milk is biblical, chicken really is biblically parv, like fish. We dysfunctionally treat it like meat because the concern is At least then the chicken apparently looked like meat, or people were concerned if you see someone eating chicken and milk, they'll eat meat and milk. So whatever, that's a separate discussion on kashrus. But the bottom line is, if the rabbis come in and said, you know what, eating milk and chicken is biblical, they violate Baal Tosef. They can't do that. They have to say, the Torah says it's okay, but we're making a fence around whatever the reason we're doing it for. So the Gemara actually raises the question, what about instituting new holidays, i.e. Purim and Hanukkah? How could the rabbis make up new holidays? Isn't that Baal Tosef? So the Gemara addresses the issue by Purim, but Hanukkah not. The Gemara concludes, don't worry, you're okay for Sunday, you can't observe Purim. But it was a discussion in the Gemara, we concluded it's okay. But Hanukkah was never mentioned, so Rashi says they never had any doubt about Hanukkah. Why? Because Hanukkah is a pure rabbinic law. But Purim perhaps is the words of the prophets, Divrei Kabbalah, because it comes from Megillas Esther. So maybe there was a conflict, we entered, it was okay, we worked things out. So the Be'er Yosef points out, by these 2 Yom Tovim we added, Yontev and Purim, so the rabbis had to go out of their way to do something different, to let everyone know these are not biblical holidays, and we're not telling you they are, and we're not violating Baal Tosef. How did they make Hanukkah unique, and how did they make Purim unique? They made Hanukkah unique, as the Gemara tells us in Shabbos, Chaf Aleph Amid Beis 21b, the 3 different levels of fulfilling your mitzvah of Hanukkah. The first level and your minimum obligation is Ner Ish Ubeso, 1 candle per household. If you lit 1 candle every night of Hanukkah, no one can take your mitzvah away. However, the next best thing is you go by members of the household. So if you have 10 members in your household, you light 10 candles every night. And if you want to do Mahajim, Mina Mahajim, the best of the best, you do the night of Hanukkah times the number of people in your home. 10 times 8 would be 80. So we never find a mitzvah like this, that we have 3 different levels on how to fulfill it, because the rabbis went out of their way to show it's only a rabbinical mitzvah. Don't think Hanukkah is a biblical mitzvah. And so too by Purim. How did they show Purim is different? It's the only Yontiv where we celebrate 2 different days depending where you live. The rabbis specifically made it different to show we're not saying Purim is biblical, we don't want to be in violation of Baal Tosef. That is the answer of the Be'er Yosef. However, the one I want to focus on tonight is the answer of the Ramban, Nachmanides, the Ran in the beginning of Megillah, the Ramban in the beginning of Megillah, Gemara Megillah, not Megillah Esther. And I'd like to share with you an interesting explanation from Rav Soloveitchik, who elaborates on this theme. And this will get down to the essence of Purim. What is Purim all about? How should we celebrate Purim? How should Jews party? So they point out as follows. If you look at the pasuk in Megillas Esther, Esther Tes Yud Tes, chapter 9, verse 19, the pasuk says, it discusses how the Jews celebrated the 14th day of Adar for Purim. So it says, Yom Mishta V'Simcha, a day of drinking and joy, U'Mishalach Manos Ish L'Reyehu. When the Megillah first describes it, it tells it's a day of drinking and joy, and it says the mitzvah of exchanging gifts, of Shalach Manos. So, what's missing from that? What mitzvah is missing? Or is any mitzvah missing? The mitzvah of Matanos Le'Evyonim. What happened to the mitzvah of giving to the poor? That's not mentioned later on until verse 22, when they go over and they go through Shalach Manos and Matanos Le'Evyonim again. So what happened here? To the Ramban has a beautiful explanation, or a descriptive explanation. What happened was when the Jews, that year of Purim, the Jews won the war. They defeated Haman and their anti-Semites, and they were all celebrating Purim, everyone. The walled cities, the non-walled cities, everyone together was celebrating Purim on the 14th. Then the next year came about, and the non-walled cities wanted to celebrate Purim again on the 14th, and they did. But the walled cities said, we don't have to celebrate. We weren't really in so much danger. Because, by the way, the purpose of walled cities, even though it seems a waste of time today because we have planes and bombs and your walls won't help too much, but during the good old days, walled cities it's a fortress, you were protected. So the Jews who lived in the walled cities felt a false sense of security. We wouldn't have been affected by Haman's decree. We would have been safe in the walled cities. And they said, we don't have to celebrate Purim. And we celebrated that first year when it happened. But now, so Mordechai and the Anshe Knesset, Agadol, others, the rabbis got together, were very upset that these Jews think that they don't feel part of Klal Yisrael. You don't feel part of the Jewish nation. So Mordechai said, you know what? We're going to institute 2 days of Purim. It's an indictment on the walled cities. So you think that you can live alone, and no, we're going to show that you're going to celebrate Purim on another day, because you have to realize, everyone's going to ask, why is walled cities on a separate day? And we're going to tell them why. Because they had the false sense of security, thinking, you know what? We were safe, and who really cares that so what, the other Jews are in danger? We weren't in danger. The whole essence of Mordechai's decree of Matanas Le'Avyonim, giving gifts to the poor, is to show whether you're rich or poor, everyone's involved. It's one community. In fact, that was, as the Brisker Rav explains, the Gemara in Sota tells us there were 3 advisors to Paro. Who were Paro's 3 advisors? Bilam, Yitro, and Eov. So the Gemara tells us that they were each rewarded and punished Mida Keneged Mida, appropriate to the crime, or the reward will be appropriate and the punishment will be appropriate. So Bilam said, kill the Jews. So Bilam himself was killed. Yisro said, I can have no part of this. He ran away, gave up a prominent position in Egypt, and his reward was he got a prominent position. His sons became descendants. His descendants became on the basement, so he got rewarded.
He got a whole parsha named after him.
Exactly, as well. But Eov was silent, and we all know what happened to Eov. He had a life of suffering. Job. So I understand the Mida Keneged Mida when it comes to Bilam and Yisro. Bilam said, kill the Jews, he was killed. Yisro gave up a prominent position, he got one. But where's the Mida Keneged Mida by Eov? So the Brisker Rav explains, I'll just use some different words, because he said it in Yiddish. I won't say it in Yiddish no more because my Yiddish isn't too good. I don't know how much you know Yiddish. Maybe some of you do. But either way, the example I'll give is, let's say you're in a shower. You're taking a hot shower, but normal hot. And all of a sudden, something happens with the temperature, whatever. All of a sudden, it gets boiling. And you jump out, you scream, and you jump out of the shower. So let me ask you something. Did the scream take away the burn on your back? Now that you scream that you don't... No, but what? If it hurts, you scream. If other people are in pain, you scream. Eov didn't feel part of being Klal Yisrael. He said, well, okay, he was quiet, even though he had good intentions. His intention was it wouldn't have helped anyway. But so what? If other Jews are suffering, other people are suffering, you got to speak up. As we know, for evil to succeed in this world, all it takes is the good to do nothing. And that's what we teach that's the chinuch we give to our children. But as the Jewish action says, chinuch, is it really working? So the chinuch we give to our kids is on Purim. We take them to shul, synagogue, and we hear the Megillah Esther. What do we do when we get to Haman's name? We have groggers, noisemakers. Some stamp their feet. Some put Haman under the shoes and they rub it out. But what's the concept? You want to teach a child at a young age that when there's an evil person like Hitler, like Haman, you got to speak up. You have to do action, because if good people do nothing, there'll be no one else left. So that's what we. So you have to make a macha. So there was an indictment on the walled cities. They didn't feel part of Klal. They felt, so what? You're in danger. I'm not in danger. I'm safe. And Mordechai realized that terrible mistake. And we see the first year, they didn't have much. They didn't think about why. When I celebrated Yontif, I'm going to give. Why should I give gifts to the poor? What does that have to do with my happiness? That's what the Mordechai taught them. That when you're celebrating, the ultimate in celebration is sharing it with the needy and those who need it most. And in fact, that's the famous Rambam I'll read from you. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah, Perek Beis, Halacha Yud Zayin. I'll just read it in English for you. It is better to spend more on gifts to the poor, that's Matanos Lavyonim, than to spend more on the Purim meal and Mishalach Manas. Of course, it's good to spend on all of them, but if you have a certain budget and something has to go, the Rambam says you should be strict on gifts to the poor and cut back on your own meal and on Shalach Manas. Why? For there is no greater and more splendid joy than to gladden the hearts of the poor, the widow, and orphans and converts. For the person who gladdens the heart of these downtrodden people is likened to is Dome L'Shechina, is compared to the divine presence. The ultimate in happiness is helping other people. And therefore, that's what they were lacking. And that's why they didn't think of doing Matanos Lavim. Mordechai came along and said, you know what? It's all about helping out others. That's how we celebrate our Yom Tovim here. Purim is all about giving to the needy. And Mordechai instituted, you know what? Matanos Lavim, as the Rambam points out, that's king. That comes first. And this isn't limited to Purim, but it's all the Yom Tovim. That every time we celebrate, we have to realize that we have to include everyone in our celebrations. We're all one big Sibor. And that's what Mordechai tried to teach the lesson. You know what? You can have Megillah on the 14th and the 5th. You also have to celebrate Purim. You are in danger. But as the Mordechai writes, as the Ramban writes in the Ran, there was an indictment on them that they should have celebrated, and then we make a separate date that they should remember. You always have to feel you are part of the Tzibur, and that's what Mordechai did. The power of giving Matanos Lavyonim, and in fact, they point out as follows that we know there's a mitzvah as well of Mishalach Manas Ish L'Re'eo, sending gifts to your friend. But some point out, I think it's the Mordechai, not Mordechai in the Megillah, Mordechai, one of the Rishonim, an earlier commentator, not earlier than Mordechai, much later, but a commentator on the Talmud. He points out that really, even Shalach Manas is all about giving to the poor. Because most people have food for the Suda, but the reinstituted Shalach Manos, it's mainly for the poor, but in order not to embarrass the poor, so if everyone gives gifts to everyone, so if a poor person gets a gift, it doesn't show anything. But if you're only giving to the poor people, it becomes embarrassing. And in fact, that's what is a beautiful explanation by Reuven Margolius, the custom of dressing up for Purim. putting on costumes and masks. Because you know why? Because even though we're a charitable nation and we have a mitzvah of tzedakah all year round, but there's a special mitzvah on Purim. Don't ask questions, forget the FBI reports, the CIA, CTU, if you watch 24, or whoever it might be. You don't have to do a research report and check whether the person's, unless you know for sure he's a phony, that's one thing else. But if not, you assume this person's poor and you give to him. And the reason, and that's where the custom of wearing costumes developed. Because if everyone put on masks and costumes, you knock on someone's door, no one knows who you are. So we see the sensitivity of Chazal. They're concerned about the poor, and they instituted, people started wearing costumes in order not to embarrass the poor. In fact, you know how far Chazal tell us that if Purim would fall out on Shabbos, which on our calendar it cannot, but it can fall on Yerushalayim on Shabbos, we do not read the Megillah. If Purim of Yud Daled Adar, or if the 15th of Adar falls on Shabbos, we do not read the Megillah on Shabbos. We read it on Friday, or we'll see, depending on the day. Why don't we read it on Shabbos? Why don't we read Megillah on Shabbos?
Shabbos trumps everything.
That's true. Let me just elaborate what Dave means by that. He means the famous Gzeira de Rabbah, that the rabbis made a decree, we're concerned with desecrating the Shabbos. Just like when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, we say no shofar. Sukkot, no lulav, and esrog, that's biblical. So too, also by Megillah. So that's one reason. But the Gemara has a second reason. You know why we don't read Megillah on Shabbos? Is because the poor people wait all year round for Purim. They know Matanas L'Avdim, have no questions asked. I get a nice outfit I put on, no one knows who I am, I get to get money without being embarrassed. And imagine reading the Megillah on Shabbos and the poor people come, oh, Shabbos, I don't have any money.
Oh, yeah.
So in order, the sensitivity of Chazal, realizing how important this day was to the poor, we say no Megillah today. We make the Megillah on Friday in order to ensure that the poor people can enjoy the Simcha. And we see, as the Rambam points out, Mordechai's institution, that's what the Rav pointed out, that was the whole concept of Mordechai, teaching us to feel the unity, to feel the love for all the people, not just oneself, not to look beyond yourself and look at the unity. And in fact, that's why it's interesting to note that this could be the pshat. The Arizal says, Yom Kippurim Kippurim. Yom Kippur is like Purim. It sounds like Purim Torah at first glance. What do we say? Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. We're in prayer all day. We're in synagogue. We're fasting. And Purim, for many, seems like one of the most frivolous days of the year. So what exactly did the Arizal mean? The Yom Kippur Kippurim. So again, there's many approaches, but this is the one I want to share, which ties into the unity, is that what does Yom Kippur and Purim have in common? That both days of Kabbalas HaTorah, they are both days associated with the giving of the Torah. What does Purim and Yom Kippur have to do with the Torah being given? So we all know on Yom Kippur, the tablets were given on Yom Kippur. And on Purim, when was the Torah given on Purim? There's a famous Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Peiches 88b. The Gemara tells us, Vayitzyatzvu b'tachtis hahar, says the Jewish people were encamped under the mountain. It is by Har Sinai. So the Gemara tells us God tilted a mountain over the head and said, if you accept the Torah good, If not, here will be a burial place. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, then the Torah isn't binding, because we all know if someone puts a gun to you and says, promise me X, Y, and Z, and of course you should, and then you don't have to keep it afterwards because it doesn't count. Any promise made under duress isn't binding. So the commitment the Jews made on Har Sinai isn't binding. So the Gemara says, you're right. Mikan mo derabba daraisa. However, so why is it binding on us? So the Gemara continues, because kimu v'kibul, that the Jews during the time of Purim re-accepted the Torah bi'ava. They accepted the Torah willingly. So we see on Purim also was a day of receiving of the Torah. And just like it says by Har Sinai, what was one of the prerequisites? Rashi points out. Rashi tells us when the Jews are sitting by Har Sinai, so Rashi says, Be'ish echad, belev echad. One happy family. They're all living in peace. Why is Rashi just a reporter telling me something coincidental? You know what? By the way, when I was writing up my story about Har Sinai and the Torah being given, the Jews happened to be living in peace. No. Rashi's telling us much more. That was a prerequisite. For the Torah to be given, you needed unity. You needed Achdus Yisrael. And that's exactly the lesson of Har Sinai, the Torah be given, and that's the message of Purim, of Achdus. That's the same message Mordechai and the Yadim are giving over to Klal Yisrael. Don't think you can live alone. No Jew can live in an island. You have to feel part of the Tzibor, part of Klal Yisrael. And that's the essence of the Yontiv of Purim. It's the Yontiv of giving. It's the ultimate making other people happy. And as we said, the Rambam, there's no greater thing, there is no greater and more splendid joy than to gladden the hearts of the poor, the widow, the orphans, the converts. For the person who gladdens the hearts of those downtrodden people are likened to the divine presence. And that's what we have to keep in mind when we celebrate the Yontiv of Purim. On Saturday night we have the Megillah, then when we go ahead and we have the Purim Suda, the Shalach Manas, the Matalas of Yonah, we can't forget to invite the needy, those who can't have a Suda. So the Medrash says that Haman told Achashverosh, is it on, Dave? Yes,
it's recorded.
So Haman said to Achashverosh, let's kill the Jews. Let's make a decree. Lahashma call Yudim. He says, no, I'm not starting with the Jewish God. Are you kidding me? He says, no, you don't have to worry. The Jews are fighting. Haman knew the secret. The Jewish God hates when there's fighting among the Yidden. When there's fighting among the Jews, sinas chinam. He says, you don't have to worry. God's not going to help them. The Jews have machlokas, the fighting. And that's what brought about the decree. And therefore, what was if fighting and achdus was the cause of was the sin? So how did we reconcile? Mordechai rectified the problem with matanas ravyonim, helping the needy, sholach manas, to have people give the suda. And it's the whole point is to make shalom and to foster relationships. And that's what it's all about, the Yontiv of Purim, to keep a couple of these things in mind when we celebrate the Yontiv of Purim this coming Motzoi Shabbos and Sunday. Have a Freilucha Purim.